I am Caroline, 34 years old, and my family erased me the day I married the man I loved because he did not fit their narrow, prejudiced view of the world. For 10 years, they treated me like I was dead. Not a single phone call, not a holiday card, just absolute silence. But the moment my husband's company went public and our net worth crossed into the millions, the silence ended. My mother showed up at my front door with an iced coffee in one hand and a $3 million list of demands in the other. My reply completely destroyed her perfectly crafted life. Before I share the details of how I dismantled their empire, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to build your own success after your family threw you away. It was a crisp Saturday morning in late October. My husband Isaiah and I were enjoying a very quiet weekend at our estate just outside the city. We were in the kitchen sipping coffee around our custom white marble island. Isaiah had been working 80-hour weeks leading up to his fintech company going public, and we finally had a moment to breathe. Then the security buzzer rang. I walked over to the monitor expecting a delivery, but the blood instantly drained from my face. Standing at the wrought iron security gate, glaring impatiently at the camera, was my mother, Beatrice. She was wearing her signature tennis club attire, a perfectly pressed cream sweater, a tennis skirt, and oversized sunglasses. I had not seen or spoken to this woman in a decade. 10 years ago, she and my father Harrison refused to attend my wedding. They told me that marrying a black man would be the ultimate humiliation for the Caldwell family legacy. They cut me off financially, socially, and emotionally. Yet right here she was pressing the buzzer, as if she were dropping by for a quick, casual neighborhood brunch. I pressed the intercom button, my voice steady. "What do you want?" "Open the gate, Caroline!" she demanded, her tone dripping with the same entitled authority she had used when I was a teenager. "We need to talk. It is about family business." I looked at Isaiah. He did not look angry or intimidated. He just gave me a calm, reassuring nod. We had nothing to fear from her. I pressed the button to open the gates. Less than 2 minutes later, Beatrice marched through our front door. She did not knock. She simply let herself in, holding a green mermaid logo coffee cup in her left hand and a thick manila folder in her right. She stopped in the foyer, pulling down her sunglasses to assess the soaring ceilings and the expensive modern art on the walls. Her eyes darted around, calculating the exact value of everything she saw. She did not offer a greeting. She just walked straight into the kitchen area. Isaiah was standing by the espresso machine, dressed casually in sweatpants and a plain gray t-shirt. My mother looked right at him, her expression hardening with an unmistakable look of disdain. She waved her hand dismissively in his direction. "Could you clear these mugs away and give us some privacy?" she said to him, her voice laced with an ugly, condescending assumption. "I need to speak with my daughter." My jaw clenched. She was standing in a house paid for, largely by the massive success of Isaiah's company, treating the CEO like the hired help simply because of the color of his skin. Isaiah did not raise his voice. He simply picked up his coffee, offered her a devastatingly polite smile, and leaned against the counter. "I think I will stay right here, Beatrice," he said, his voice smooth and commanding. "This is my kitchen, after all." Her face flushed red, but she quickly masked her embarrassment with a scoff, turning her attention solely to me. She threw the manila folder onto the pristine marble island. It landed with a heavy thud. "Your father's real estate firm is facing a temporary cash flow issue," she announced. "Caldwell Enterprises needs a bridge loan to get through the quarter. $3 million should cover the immediate overhead. We expect the wire transfer by Tuesday morning." I stared at the folder, then back at her. "You have not spoken to me in 10 years, I said, keeping my voice dangerously quiet. "You boycotted my wedding. You told the rest of the family I was dead to you. And you dare come into my home, insult my husband, and demand $3 million. "It is not a demand, it is your obligation," she snapped. "We raised you. We paid for your private schools. You owe us for the life we gave you. Besides, everyone knows about the initial public offering of his company." She gestured vaguely toward Isaiah without looking at him. "We know you have the money sitting around. Family helps family, Caroline." I opened the folder. Inside was not just a demand for the business. There was a second page detailing a real estate listing for a luxury penthouse downtown. "What is this?" I asked, pointing to the second page. "That is for your sister Amanda," Beatrice explained. "Her third marriage just fell apart, and the divorce has been hard on her nerves. She needs a fresh start. The penthouse is $2 million. Bundle it with the business wire transfer. Consider it a welcome back gift." The sheer entitlement was staggering. Amanda wanted a $2 million apology gift for a divorce she caused, and Beatrice expected me to foot the bill. They wanted $5 million total, handed over with no questions asked. I reached for the folder, fully prepared to rip it into tiny pieces. But Isaiah gently placed his hand over mine, smiled at my mother, and said his very next words, "We should not be too hasty to dismiss family." "Caroline," Isaiah said smoothly, his voice a perfect baritone of corporate diplomacy. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. I stared at his hand resting over mine. His skin, a rich dark brown against my pale fingers, grounded me instantly. That contrast, the beautiful reality of our partnership, was the exact reason Beatrice and Harrison had erased me from their lives a decade ago. Looking at my mother now standing in my kitchen with her demanding posture and designer clothes, the memories of our wedding day flooded my mind with absolute clarity. 10 years ago, we sent out 150 invitations to my side of the family. Not a single person RSVP'd, yes. Instead, I received a certified letter from my father's attorney, officially cutting off my trust fund, followed by a deeply venomous phone call from my mother. I remember standing in my tiny rented apartment, holding my cheap cell phone, listening to Beatrice deliver her final verdict on my future. She did not use slurs. People of her social class rarely did. They wrapped their bigotry in the language of elitism and concern. She told me that marrying an African American man would permanently stain the pristine Caldwell legacy. She said Isaiah was simply not one of us, a phrase dripping with generations of inherited prejudice. She warned me that bringing him into their social circles would cost my father his most valuable investors. They told me I had to choose between my family and my fiancé. If I walked down the aisle with him, I would be entirely dead to them. I chose Isaiah. We married in a small courthouse ceremony with 2 friends as witnesses. We had no grand reception, no expensive floral arrangements, and absolutely no family support. We spent our wedding night eating cheap takeout on the floor of our unfurnished apartment. We had nothing but our ambition and each other. For the next decade, while we built our careers from the ground up, my family maintained their total boycott. They missed my graduation from my master's program. They missed the launch of Isaiah's first software product. They missed every hospital visit, every holiday, every struggle, and every triumph. They actively pretended I did not exist. I learned through mutual acquaintances that Beatrice told her country club friends I had moved to Europe to find myself an elegant lie to cover up their racist abandonment. While they were sipping champagne at charity galas and leveraging their real estate firm for more social clout, Isaiah and I were working brutal 18-hour days. I became a ruthless data analyst, learning to dissect financial markets with surgical precision. Isaiah built a financial technology empire, focused on debt restructuring, navigating a predominantly white corporate landscape that constantly tried to underestimate him. We fought for every single dollar we earned. We relied on no one. And now, after 10 years of treating my husband like a disease they needed to eradicate from their bloodline, Beatrice had the absolute audacity to stand in the home his intellect had paid for, demanding millions of dollars to fund her golden child's divorce recovery. I pulled my gaze away from Isaiah's hand and looked directly into my mother's eyes. The silence in the kitchen was heavy, broken only by the low hum of the espresso machine. "You want $3 million for Caldwell Enterprises?" I stated, ensuring my voice was completely devoid of emotion. "And you want a $2 million penthouse for Amanda because she failed at her third marriage." Beatrice lifted her chin, interpreting my calm demeanor as compliance. "It is the least you can do, Caroline. We raised you. We provided you with an elite upbringing, the best tutors, the best clothes. You owe us for the foundational years of your life. This is simply back payment for everything we invested in you before you decided to throw your life away." And frankly, considering the public offering of this company $5 million is a drop in the bucket for you. It is time to pay your dues to the people who gave you your start. The sheer magnitude of her delusion was breathtaking. She felt entirely entitled to the wealth generated by the very man she had deemed unworthy to step foot in her house. She viewed my success not as an achievement, but as an asset she could liquidate to cover my father's failing business and my sister's reckless spending. A cold, sharp fury ignited in my chest. I opened my mouth to deliver a verbal execution. I was fully prepared to order her out of my house, to tell her exactly where she could shove her list of demands, and to call security to drag her off our estate. I wanted to see the look of humiliation on her face when I formally rejected her. But before I could speak a single word, Isaiah squeezed my hand. It was a subtle, deliberate pressure, a silent command to stand down. Isaiah stepped forward, placing himself between me and my mother. He picked up the manila folder containing the financial demands and flipped it open with casual grace. His demeanor was terrifyingly polite, the exact persona he used when dismantling hostile corporate takeovers in boardrooms. He did not look like a man whose home had just been invaded by a racist mother-in-law. He looked like an apex predator evaluating a very slow, very blind prey. "We certainly understand the importance of family legacy," Beatrice, Isaiah said, his voice entirely smooth and professional, "and we are always open to exploring new investment opportunities. However, as I am sure Harrison understands, a $3 million cash injection into Caldwell Enterprises is a significant financial commitment. My firm does not distribute capital based on handwritten lists and emotional appeals. We operate on data transparency and cold, hard business facts without any personal family exceptions whatsoever." Isaiah closed the folder. "If Caldwell Enterprises requires a bridge loan of this magnitude to survive, I am willing to entertain the proposition." He continued, his tone perfectly neutral. "However, my terms are non-negotiable. Before a single dollar leaves my accounts, I require a formal pitch. I need to see the complete financial ledger's current debt obligations, asset valuations, and unedited balance sheets for the last 5 fiscal years." Beatrice stared at him, caught off guard by his clinical delivery. She walked into our home expecting to bulldoze her way to a quick payout by leveraging maternal guilt. She anticipated a screaming match with me, or an intimidated response from the man she spent a decade treating like a societal pariah. I watched my mother's face. I saw brief hesitation. The idea of opening up Caldwell Enterprises books to an outsider, especially the black son-in-law she despised, galled her. But then the hesitation vanished, replaced by a sickening, greedy triumph. Her eyes lit up with arrogant calculation. Beatrice looked at Isaiah and saw only a gullible tech nerd desperate for the approval of the old money establishment. She assumed he used corporate jargon to impress her, trying to buy into the Caldwell family's good graces. She had no idea she was dealing with a man whose fortune was built dismantling toxic financial structures. "I understand completely," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with manufactured warmth. "We are running a successful empire, Isaiah. A temporary cash flow hiccup is simply part of doing business at our level. Harrison keeps immaculate records. We have nothing to hide." I kept my expression blank, though amusement sparked inside my chest. Harrison Caldwell built his reputation on smoke mirrors and leveraged debt. If his company was begging an estranged daughter for $3 million to survive, their books were undoubtedly a catastrophic wasteland of liabilities. By agreeing to open their ledgers to us, Beatrice handed over the blueprint to their own destruction. "Excellent," Isaiah replied. "I suggest we schedule a formal presentation. Bring Harrison. Bring Amanda, since she is part of this financial package. Let us say tomorrow evening at 7. We will host a dinner here, and we can discuss the restructuring of your family debt over the main course." Beatrice beamed. The prospect of a luxury dinner combined with the delusion of an impending payout was too intoxicating to resist. "Tomorrow at 7 is perfectly acceptable," she announced, walking toward the door. "I will have Harrison gather the paperwork. And Caroline, make sure your catering staff prepares something suitable. Amanda requires a delicate menu." I did not answer. I watched as she marched out, the heavy oak door clicking shut behind her. Silence returned to the foyer, thick and charged with electricity. I stared at the space where she had been standing. The audacity of her demands was ringing in my ears. I turned to look at my husband. Isaiah was no longer smiling. The polite corporate diplomat routine evaporated instantly, leaving behind the calculating founder of a ruthless financial empire. He tossed the folder onto the island with utter disgust. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softening only for me. I took a deep breath, the anger replaced by precise focus. "I am fine," I said. "But why did you invite them back? I was ready to throw her out." Isaiah wrapped an arm around my waist. "Because kicking her out would only give them a reason to play the victim. If we let them lay their entire financial reality out on our dining room table, we take away their narrative. I want to see exactly how deep their grave goes." I looked down at the folder. "She thinks you are an easy mark trying to buy her respect," I murmured. "I know exactly what she thinks," Isaiah replied, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "People like your mother underestimate people like me. It is their fatal flaw. They rely on entitlement. We rely on data. Tomorrow night, Harrison is going to hand over the keys to his kingdom, and when he does, we are going to dissect Caldwell Enterprises piece by piece." A slow, predatory smile spread across my face. I spent 10 years building my skills as a data analyst, learning to find the hidden truths buried in balance sheets. I knew how to track missing assets and spot fraud from a mile away. My parents thought they were walking into a welcome back party to secure their retirement and fund my sister's luxury life. They were oblivious to the reality of their situation. They were stepping willingly into the lion's den, wearing suits and carrying briefcases, unaware that we had already locked the doors. The trap was officially set. I poured a fresh cup of coffee. "We need to prepare," I told Isaiah, my mind shifting into high gear. "Harrison is a master of obfuscation. He will bring sanitized reports and projected earnings that are completely fabricated. It is inevitable. We need to push him off balance." Isaiah nodded, pulling up a secure network on his tablet. "My team is looking into their public filings. We will have a baseline of their public debt by tomorrow morning. But the real leverage will be in the private ledgers he tries to hide." I leaned against the counter. "Amanda will be the weak link," I noted coldly. "She is careless. If Harrison tries to stonewall us, we press Amanda. She will boast about something she should not, revealing a deeper cash flow issue. She cannot help herself. She has always needed to prove she is superior." "It is almost poetic," Isaiah mused, typing on his keyboard. 10 years ago, they threw you away because they thought you were ruining their financial future. Now they are coming to you to save it." I sipped my coffee. "They are not coming to me," I corrected him. "They are coming to the bank account I represent. They see us as a bailout." "But a bailout requires a ship worth saving," Isaiah replied. "We will see their hull tomorrow." At 7 the next evening, our security cameras chimed. A leased Mercedes pulled up. Harrison and Amanda arrived. Beatrice apparently assumed the deal was already done. I stood beside Isaiah in the foyer as our house manager opened the doors. Harrison walked in wearing a charcoal suit. He gripped a vintage leather briefcase tightly. His face told a different story. The deep lines around his eyes betrayed a man drowning in debt. Right behind him was my younger sister Amanda. She wore a crimson cocktail dress wildly inappropriate for a business dinner, paired with a calculated smile meant to elicit sympathy for her freshly ruined third marriage. "Caroline," my father boomed, opening his arms as if the past decade of silence had just been a scheduling conflict. "You have done quite well for yourself." I offered a stiff nod. "Hello, Harrison." He quickly recovered, turning his salesman's smile toward my husband. "Isaiah. It is a pleasure to finally sit down together. I have been following your company's public offering. Brilliant market timing. Truly exceptional work." The hypocrisy was suffocating. This was the man who threatened to disinherit me because having a black son-in-law would terrify his investors. Now he looked at Isaiah like a lottery ticket. Amanda stepped out, her eyes locking onto Isaiah. She ignored me stepping into his personal space. She extended her hand, her voice dropping into a breathy purr. "Isaiah." I have heard incredible things. It is unfair Caroline has been hiding you from us all these years. Isaiah took her hand, his expression giving away nothing. We have been busy building an empire, Amanda. Time gets away from you. Please step into the dining room. Dinner is ready. Our chef prepared a 4-course meal, but the tension made the air heavy. We sat at the walnut table. Harrison placed his briefcase on the floor. He started the evening with light chatter, attempting to project the illusion of a wealthy patriarch, checking in on his successful children. So, Caroline Harrison began. Your mother mentioned you are still doing that computer stuff. Data analysis. Was it? I am a senior data analyst, I replied. I specialize in forensic financial modeling and market risk assessment. Harrison chuckled, a patronizing sound that transported me back to my teenage years. Right. Number crunching. It is steady work for someone who likes sitting behind a desk. But real business, the kind of legacy building we do at Caldwell Enterprises, requires vision. It requires shaking hands and moving tangible assets. I always hoped you would join the real estate firm, but you lacked that aggressive entrepreneurial spirit. I took a slow sip of water. I felt Isaiah tense beside me, but I gave him a micro-expression indicating I had this under control. Harrison sat in a custom dining room funded entirely by our aggressive entrepreneurial spirit, yet he still felt the need to belittle my career, to inflate his shattered ego. He was unaware that my forensic number crunching was about to dismantle his fictional reality. Amanda decided this was her opening. She leaned heavily across the table toward Isaiah, her dress shifting deliberately to draw his attention. It must be exhausting for you, Isaiah, running such a massive company yourself. Caroline is sweet, but she has always been a bit boring. Just books and spreadsheets. You need a partner who understands the spotlight, someone who knows how to navigate high society and entertain your top-tier investors. The audacity of my sister flirting with my husband across our dinner table while begging us for a $2 million penthouse was toxic narcissism. She genuinely believed her inherited country club charm was superior to my intellect. She thought Isaiah would be captivated by a spoiled socialite playing the damsel in distress. Isaiah set his fork down, his gaze shifting to Amanda. His eyes were cold and devoid of warmth. Actually, Amanda, my success is entirely dependent on Caroline's ability to read data. While I handle the public-facing operations, Caroline is the architect behind our risk management. She protects our assets from bad investments and fraudulent partners. I would never make a major financial move without her explicit approval. She is the most dangerous person in any boardroom we enter. Amanda's manufactured smile faltered. She leaned back in her chair, shooting me a glare of pure venom. Harrison cleared his throat loudly, sensing Amanda's attempts to undermine me were backfiring and jeopardizing his cash injection. He hoisted his leather briefcase onto the table, pushing his half-eaten dinner aside. Well, speaking of investments and risk management, Harrison declared, eager to shift the spotlight back to his agenda. Your mother mentioned you were open to a bridge loan partnership. Caldwell Enterprises is poised for massive expansion next quarter. We just need a minor $3 million injection to finalize some acquisitions. I brought the portfolios and the projected returns. He unlatched the briefcase with a loud click. He pulled out a stack of glossy, professionally bound folders and slid them across the polished wood toward Isaiah. The covers featured the Caldwell Enterprises logo in embossed gold lettering. It looked incredibly official, wealthy, and fake. Isaiah did not touch the folders. He simply looked at me. I reached across the table and pulled the stack of documents toward my plate. Harrison frowned, clearly unhappy that the boring data analyst's daughter was intercepting his pitch to the billionaire CEO. Isaiah handles the capital distribution, I stated, opening the first glossy folder. But as he just mentioned, I handle the risk assessment. Let us see what kind of legacy you are actually building, Harrison. Harrison adjusted his tie, suddenly looking very warm in his tailored suit. The fake welcome back dinner was over. The trap had officially snapped shut around them, and they had absolutely no idea how tight the jaws were about to squeeze. I flipped open the first glossy folder. The pages were thick, expensive, and filled with colorful pie charts and upward trending graphs. Harrison leaned forward, steepling his fingers. He launched into his rehearsed pitch. He used words like synergy market expansion and unprecedented regional growth. He spoke with the booming confidence of a man used to charming, easily manipulated investors on the golf course. "These are our conservative estimates," Harrison declared, tapping a manicured finger against the table. "As you can see, our commercial leasing division is thriving. We hold prime properties across the state. The $3 million bridge loan will merely facilitate the acquisition of a rival firm, allowing us to monopolize the suburban commercial sector. We project a 30% return on your investment within 18 months." I did not look at him. My eyes tracked across the balance sheet. 10 years of forensic data analysis had trained my brain to spot anomalies instantly. Numbers tell a story, and the story on these pages was an absolute fairy tale. I turned to the operating cash flow statement. I traced the columns of revenue against the stated liabilities. Something glaringly obvious jumped out at me. "Your property valuation model is fascinating, Harrison," I said, keeping my voice entirely flat. "You are citing a 20% year-over-year appreciation on your commercial portfolio. But the commercial real estate market in your primary sector has been stagnant for 3 years. In fact, retail leasing has dropped by 8%. Harrison waved a hand in the air. "Those are general market trends, Caroline. Our properties are premium tier. We secure long-term corporate tenants. You cannot apply basic market averages to Caldwell Enterprises." I flipped to the next page, scanning the debt-to-equity ratio. "I can when your reported rental income does not match your tax liabilities," I countered. "You claim a net operating income of $4 million. Yet your property maintenance and management expenses are listed at a mere fraction of industry standard. You are artificially deflating your operational costs to inflate your net profit." Harrison shifted his weight. His face grew red. "That is an aggressive interpretation. We simply have a highly efficient property management team." I did not stop. I turned to the schedule of liabilities. "If your management is so efficient, why are you carrying such high short-term debt? You have listed $2 million in mezzanine financing maturing in less than 90 days. You are not using this $3 million bridge loan for an acquisition. You are using it to pay off toxic debt before a predatory lender seizes your core assets." Harrison slammed his hand flat against the table. The sudden noise made Amanda jump. "You are a data analyst, Caroline." He barked, his charming facade cracking. "You sit in a cubicle and look at spreadsheets all day. You do not understand the complexities of high-level commercial real estate. Isaiah, surely you understand how leverage works in building a corporate empire." Isaiah took a slow sip of his sparkling water. He did not look at Harrison. He looked at me with an expression of deep admiration. "I understand that my wife just caught you lying on a financial disclosure document," Isaiah said smoothly. "I suggest you answer her questions." Harrison opened his mouth, but no words came out. The room was suffocatingly quiet. He was completely cornered. His glossy presentation was shredded in less than 5 minutes. Amanda panicked. She saw her $2 million penthouse slipping away. She leaned forward, her face flushed with desperation and anger. She decided to intervene fully, believing her country club confidence could overpower my analytical logic. "You are being ridiculously paranoid, Caroline." Amanda snapped, her voice shrill. "Daddy is bringing you the summarized investor reports. Of course they are streamlined. You cannot expect him to print out the raw server data for a dinner conversation. The actual internal books are perfectly fine." I raised an eyebrow. "The internal books?" "Yes," Amanda insisted, crossing her arms defensively. "If you actually looked at the real accounting software instead of interrogating him over a summary packet, you would see the company is perfectly healthy. Our IT director Kevin just migrated all our raw financial data to a secure cloud server last week. It is on the new Caldwell Secure portal. You are just trying to find a reason to humiliate us because you are still bitter about the past." I stopped breathing for a fraction of a second. I kept my face entirely neutral, but my mind was exploding with the magnitude of what she just handed me. Amanda, in her reckless attempt to defend Harrison and secure her luxury apartment, had just handed me the keys to the kingdom. She gave me the name of the IT director, the fact that a recent cloud migration had occurred, and the exact name of the new server portal. In the world of corporate data, a fresh cloud migration meant temporary vulnerabilities, default administrator passwords, and unsecured backdoors. She had inadvertently handed a professional data hacker a direct map to Caldwell Enterprises' unedited, unfiltered financial truth. Harrison shot Amanda a furious, silencing glare. Amanda shrank back into her chair, realizing she had spoken out of turn, though she had no idea the lethal magnitude of her mistake. I slowly closed the glossy folder. I aligned the edges perfectly with the edge of the mahogany table. I looked at Harrison, watching a single bead of sweat slide down his pale temple. "You are right, Amanda," I said, my voice completely devoid of hostility. "It is unfair to interrogate Harrison over a summarized investor packet. Financial summaries rarely tell the whole story. We definitely need to look at the comprehensive raw data to make an informed decision." Harrison exhaled a shaky breath, falsely assuming I was backing down completely. "Absolutely, Caroline. I can have my own accounting team put together a more detailed portfolio for you by next week." "That will not be necessary, Harrison," I replied, offering a tight, unreadable smile. "We have plenty to think about for now. Let us finish our meal and enjoy the evening." The rest of the dinner passed in excruciating superficiality. Harrison and Amanda drank expensive wine, entirely convinced they had salvaged the pitch. They genuinely believed my demand for raw data was just a stalling tactic, a minor hurdle they could easily bypass with another set of forged summaries. By 10 o'clock, they were walking out our front doors, exchanging victorious glances. They thought they had secured a $3 million lifeline. They had no idea they had just handed me the shovel to dig their financial grave. The moment the heavy doors clicked shut, the performance ended. I walked straight past the dining room, down the long corridor, and into my private home office. The room was soundproof, lined with sleek monitors, and a high-powered desktop configured for heavy data lifting. Isaiah followed me quietly, leaning against the doorframe, watching as I booted up the system. "You really think Amanda gave you enough to get in?" he asked, his voice low in the quiet house. I cracked my knuckles, my eyes locked on the glowing screens. "People like Harrison do not hire elite cybersecurity experts," I explained, pulling up a command terminal. "They hire cheap IT guys, like Kevin, who cut corners to save money. A fresh cloud migration to a platform called Caldwell Secure Portal means default administrative credentials are likely still active. Kevin probably migrated the database, set a basic encryption key, and went home for the weekend." My fingers flew across the keyboard. I ran a basic penetration protocol, scanning the external framework of the Caldwell domain. It took exactly 14 minutes to locate the backend login page Amanda had so foolishly named. The portal security was a joke. I bypassed the two-factor authentication by spoofing an internal network address, an elementary trick that any competent tech department would have blocked. A progress bar flashed across my screen. Then the system granted me total access. I was inside the Caldwell Enterprises master server. "Pull up the general ledger," Isaiah instructed, stepping behind my chair to look over my shoulder. "Let us see the bleeding." I accessed the master accounting files, bypassing the sanitized investor folders Harrison had brought to dinner. I opened the raw balance sheets. The numbers sprawling across my monitors were nothing short of apocalyptic. The company was not just struggling. It was a financial corpse entirely propped up by toxic debt. They were bleeding cash, running a monthly deficit in the hundreds of thousands. The property valuations Harrison had bragged about were leveraged to the absolute maximum. They had multiple loans maturing in weeks and absolutely zero liquid capital to cover the balloon payments. "They are dead in the water," I muttered, scrolling through a list of angry vendor invoices and past due notices. $3 million would not save this company. It would barely cover the interest on their short-term commercial liabilities. They are officially bankrupt in everything but name. Isaiah crossed his arms, his eyes narrowing at a specific line item on the screen. "Go back," he commanded sharply. "Look at the long-term liabilities schedule. Scroll down to the secured commercial loans." I scrolled down, scanning the rows of debt. Then my eyes caught a massive entry. It was a secured commercial loan for $5 million issued by a predatory lending group known for sky-high interest rates and aggressive foreclosure tactics. The loan was severely delinquent. The bank was preparing to issue a notice of default next week. But that was not the horrifying part. I clicked on the loan details, accessing the scanned PDF of the original promissory note. The document loaded onto my screen. My breath caught in my throat. The room spun wildly for a fraction of a second. I felt a cold, paralyzing shock radiate down my spine, freezing the blood in my veins. Isaiah leaned closer, his breathing completely silent. Right there on the digital page were 3 signatures: Harrison Caldwell, Beatrice Caldwell, and underneath them in clear, unmistakable ink was Caroline Caldwell. My name. Below the signature was my date of birth, my previous permanent address, and my exact social security number. "This loan was issued 7 years ago," I whispered, my voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and mounting horror. 7 years ago, I was living in a studio apartment eating ramen noodles, completely cut off from them. I had not spoken to them in 3 years. Isaiah's jaw locked. The muscles in his neck jumped. "They forged your signature, Caroline. They committed felony identity theft to secure a $5 million loan." The reality of the betrayal hit me like a physical blow. They did not just disown me because I married a black man. They did not just erase me from their social circles to preserve their bigoted country club reputation. They secretly kept my identity alive for one specific malicious purpose. They used my pristine credit score, untouched by their reckless corporate borrowing, to act as a guarantor for a massive high-risk loan. If Caldwell Enterprises defaulted on this $5 million loan, the bank would not just seize my parents' assets. The bank would come after me. They would freeze my personal accounts. They would legally mandate garnishments on my income. The ensuing financial scandal would hit the press instantly. Beatrice and Harrison knew this. When my mother stood in my kitchen demanding $3 million, she was not asking for a favor. She knew she had a loaded gun pointed directly at our livelihood. If we did not pay them the cash to cover their debts, they would intentionally default, taking our entire world down with them. I downloaded the loan file, securing the PDFs into an encrypted folder. "We are not waiting. I am going to their house early tomorrow morning." I left the estate before the sun was fully up. Isaiah offered to accompany me, but I needed to handle this breach alone. I drove down the familiar manicured roads toward the affluent suburb where I grew up. The sprawling Caldwell mansions sat behind tall wrought iron gates, dripping with the old money aesthetic my parents desperately clung to. I punched in the old keypad code, entirely unsurprised when the heavy metal gates groaned open. They had not bothered to change the security code in 10 years. They were arrogant, assuming their gated community protected them from real threats. They had no idea the threat was already inside. I parked on the circular driveway, grabbed the printed folder containing the explosive evidence, and marched up the wide brick steps. I did not knock on the heavy oak door. I used the spare key hidden under the stone planter to unlock it myself. The foyer was dead silent. I walked past the grand curved staircase and headed straight toward the sunroom at the back of the house. I knew their routines perfectly. My parents had breakfast there every Sunday morning. I found them sitting at a glass patio table sipping tea and reading the financial news on their respective tablets. Beatrice was wearing an elegant silk robe, and Harrison was dressed in his expensive golf attire. They looked so perfectly composed, so comfortably wrapped in their manufactured wealth and unearned entitlement. Harrison looked up, genuinely startled by my sudden appearance in his private sanctuary. "Caroline?" he said, his voice laced with confusion. "What are you doing here so early in the morning? I thought we were giving you and Isaiah the weekend to review the investment packet we provided." I did not answer him immediately. I walked over to the glass table and slammed the thick folder down right on top of his digital tablet. The heavy, violent thud made the fine china rattle and caused Beatrice to flinch. I reviewed the packet, I said, keeping my voice dangerously low and steady. But I also reviewed the unedited server data. "I saw the $5 million commercial loan you took out 7 years ago." Beatrice froze completely. The teacup in her hand stopped halfway to her mouth. She slowly lowered it back to its saucer, the ceramic clinking softly in the quiet room. I opened the folder, flipping directly to the printed copy of the promissory note. I pointed a steady finger at the bottom of the page. You used my social security number. You forged my signature to act as a guarantor for your toxic debt. 7 years ago, while you were telling everyone in your country club that I was dead to you because of my marriage, you were secretly committing felony identity theft to fund your failing empire. I stood there waiting for the reaction. I expected them to panic. I expected denial or crying, or perhaps a desperate attempt to explain it away as an accounting error. I expected Harrison to scramble for an excuse to blame his corporate lawyers or his financial advisors. I anticipated watching them squirm and beg for forgiveness now that their federal crime was exposed in broad daylight. Instead, Harrison simply leaned back in his wicker chair. He looked down at the printed document bearing my forged signature, then slowly looked up at me. The charming salesman's smile he had worn so easily at my dinner table the night before completely vanished. His features hardened into something cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. Beatrice did not gasp or offer a tearful apology. She calmly picked up her porcelain teacup, took a delicate measured sip, and gracefully crossed her legs as if we were discussing the daily weather. The masks were officially off. There was no more pretending to be the concerned, loving parents trying to rebuild a broken family bond. There was no more fake warmth or polite corporate diplomacy. The cheerful illusions they projected to the world evaporated instantly. There was only absolute cold-blooded malice, staring right back at me. You always were way too smart for your own good, Caroline Harrison stated. His voice was completely devoid of warmth or parental affection. You left us no choice. When you decided to marry that man and ruin our social standing, prominent investors backed out of our projects. We lost a significant amount of capital because of your selfish, defiant choices. Your pristine credit score was the absolute only asset you had left to offer this family. We simply utilized it to stabilize the company and our lives. You stole my identity! I fired back, my hands curling into tight fists at my sides. You chained my financial future to a $5 million anchor without my knowledge. You committed a federal crime. Beatrice sneered, looking at me with pure, unfiltered disgust. You owed us that money, Caroline. We gave you everything you ever wanted. We provided a flawless upbringing, and you threw it all away on a disgraceful marriage that humiliated us in front of our peers. You should be thanking us for not suing you for the total cost of your childhood. We used your signature because it was the only logical way to save the legacy you so recklessly tried to destroy. It was a basic business decision, nothing more, so grow up. I stared at the two people who had brought me into this world. They felt absolutely no remorse for their actions. They viewed my identity as mere corporate collateral, a convenient tool to be exploited to maintain their lavish lifestyle and social status. They were not sorry they committed fraud. They were only annoyed that I had uncovered it so quickly. The utter lack of humanity in their eyes extinguished any lingering hesitation I had left in my soul. They were not my parents. They were hostile financial adversaries who had actively tried to destroy my husband and me, and I was going to ruin them. Beatrice sets her teacup down completely now. The porcelain rings sharply against the glass tabletop, a crisp sound that shatters whatever illusion of family remained in this sunroom. She stands up, smoothing the front of her expensive silk robe, and walks toward the large bay windows overlooking their pristine, heavily mortgaged swimming pool. She does not look like a woman caught committing a federal crime. She looks like a predator who has successfully cornered her prey. The sheer audacity of her composure makes my blood run cold. She turns back to face me, a chilling smile stretching across her perfectly maintained face. You think you have us cornered, Caroline? Beatrice states, her voice echoing with absolute supremacy. You think finding that piece of paper gives you leverage over Caldwell Enterprises? You are so naive. You have spent too much time hiding behind your computer screens, crunching numbers and analyzing data sets. You do not understand how real power operates in the real world. Let me explain your current reality to you. We are not paying back that $5 million commercial loan. In fact, Harrison and I have officially decided to default on the entire balance by the end of next week. My breath catches in my throat. I stare at her, my mind racing through the financial implications. If they default, the predatory lending group will immediately initiate foreclosure proceedings. They will seize every asset tied to the loan. And because my name is forged as a primary guarantor, the bank will automatically come after my personal accounts, my investments, and my husband's assets. The credit destruction will be instantaneous and catastrophic. Harrison chuckles darkly from his wicker chair, clearly enjoying the look of dawning realization on my face. He leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You see the beauty of the situation now," Harrison interjects smoothly. "If we go down, you go down with us. The moment that notice of default is filed, your pristine financial reputation is obliterated. You will be legally entangled in a massive corporate bankruptcy. Your assets will be frozen. But that is not even the best part. The best part is the public spectacle this will create for your beloved husband. Isaiah is preparing to take his financial technology company public. An initial public offering requires absolute spotless transparency and impeccable leadership credibility from everyone involved." Beatrice walks back to the table and leans over it, bringing her face inches from mine. Her eyes are filled with pure calculated malice. "Imagine the headlines, Caroline," she whispers, enunciating every single syllable. "A high-profile black executive attempting to launch a billion-dollar financial empire has a wife caught in a $5 million debt default. The media will absolutely devour him. Wall Street investors will panic. They will pull their capital faster than you can blink. His board of directors will demand his resignation to protect the company. You will destroy his entire life." I stand completely paralyzed. The threat is not just a financial maneuver, it is a targeted, racialized assassination of Isaiah's character and career. Beatrice and Harrison know exactly how hard Isaiah had to fight to be taken seriously in a predominantly white corporate sector. They know that a scandal of this magnitude involving unpaid debt and corporate fraud would be weaponized against him instantly. They are weaponizing the very systemic prejudice they harbor to hold a gun to my husband's head. They are willing to torpedo his hard-earned legacy just to cover their own reckless, arrogant mistakes. "So here is your ultimatum," Beatrice announces, stepping back and crossing her arms defensively. "You have 48 hours to wire $3 million directly into the primary account of Caldwell Enterprises. If the funds arrive, we will use them to satisfy the immediate loan demands and restructure the remaining debt. We will remove your name as a guarantor quietly. No one will ever know. Your husband's precious initial public offering will proceed without a single hiccup. You will protect his reputation, and you will finally pay the debt you owe us for your privileged childhood." Harrison nods in agreement, looking thoroughly pleased with his wife's ruthless negotiation tactics. "Consider it an investment in your husband's future," he adds callously. $3 million is a cheap price to pay to keep everyone's reputation completely intact. If you refuse, the default goes public next Friday. The federal investigators will eventually figure out the signature was forged, but that legal process takes years. By the time your name is cleared in court, Isaiah's company will be utterly ruined, his investors will be gone, and you will be the reason he lost everything he built. The sheer evil of their blackmail attempt is suffocating. They are demanding a $3 million ransom to save me from a crime they committed against me. They are holding my husband's future hostage, fully expecting me to fold under the pressure of protecting the man I love. They think I am still the terrified, rejected daughter they threw away 10 years ago. They think I will panic, drain my accounts, and submit to their extortion just to maintain peace. They underestimate the decade I spent building an armor of pure, unbreakable logic beside a corporate titan. I look at Harrison, then at Beatrice. I do not scream. I do not beg them to reconsider. The burning rage in my chest solidifies into absolute freezing ice. They have laid all their cards on the table, exposing the darkest depths of their depravity. They think they have cornered a frightened child, but they have actually just handed a loaded weapon to a forensic analyst who knows exactly how to pull the trigger. I pick up my folder from the table, gripping the forged documents tightly. They have no idea what is coming for them. I will be leaving now, I say, my voice eerily calm, reflecting a woman who has just accepted the parameters of a deadly war. Enjoy your morning tea. I turn on my heel, my footsteps echoing against the marble floors as I walk out. The heavy front doors close behind me, sealing their ultimate fate. I step off the wide brick porch, the morning air crisp against my skin. The heavy doors have just closed behind me, but my escape from the estate is immediately blocked. Standing at the base of the driveway, leaning casually against the driver's side door of my car, is my younger sister. Amanda is wearing oversized designer sunglasses and a cashmere lounge set that probably costs more than a standard mortgage payment. She holds a crystal glass filled with a morning mimosa, swirling the orange liquid with an air of absolute arrogance. She has clearly been waiting for me. She did not want to miss the opportunity to twist the knife. You always did know how to make a dramatic exit, Caroline, Amanda says, taking a slow sip from her glass. Her voice is thick with the same condescending drawl our mother uses. I heard the shouting from the upstairs landing. Mom and Dad really put you in your place, did they not? It is about time someone reminded you of how things actually work around here. You cannot just run off, marry someone who does not belong in our world, and expect to face zero consequences. You owe this family for the embarrassment you caused us. I stop a few feet away from her. The sheer delusion radiating from my sister is almost suffocating. She knows about the forged signatures. She knows about the $5 million commercial loan obtained through felony identity theft. Yet she does not view it as a crime. To Amanda, stealing my social security number is simply a justified tax collected for my defiance. She views my financial ruin as an acceptable trade for maintaining her country club lifestyle. I look at her, keeping my expression perfectly blank. You are an accomplice to federal fraud, Amanda, I state clearly. They stole my identity, and you are standing here drinking champagne, acting like this is a minor family dispute. Amanda laughs. It is a high, grating sound that echoes across the manicured lawn. Oh, please, Caroline, do not play the victim. You have millions of dollars sitting in your husband's bank accounts. You guys practically print money with that little tech company of his. Mom and Dad just borrowed a tiny fraction of your pristine credit score to keep Caldwell Enterprises afloat. It is harmless. And honestly, considering the massive payout you are about to give us to keep this quiet, it was a brilliant business move. She pushes off my car and takes a step closer. The smell of expensive perfume and alcohol washes over me. Let us get down to the actual business at hand. Amanda continues, her smile turning predatory. I know Mom gave you the ultimatum, but I want to make my personal terms crystal clear. You are going to authorize the transfer for the $2 million penthouse downtown by tomorrow afternoon. Consider it my personal hush money. I stare at her, letting the silence stretch. Hush money, I repeat, ensuring I hear the extortion plainly. Exactly, Amanda says, her eyes gleaming with greedy anticipation behind her sunglasses. Because if you do not pay up, I am not just going to let Mom and Dad default on that loan. I will personally make sure every single socialite investor and media outlet in this city knows that your husband is tied to a massive financial scandal. Isaiah is trying to take his company public, right? Imagine what happens when I call my friends at the business journals and leak that his wife is wrapped up in a $5 million default. They will tear him apart. A black CEO with a scandal like that will not survive a week. You know how these investors think. They will drop him instantly. She is weaponizing the same systemic racism that fueled our parents' initial rejection of Isaiah. She knows exactly how vulnerable minority founders are to negative press, and she is using that prejudice as a bludgeon to extort a luxury apartment. She is perfectly willing to destroy an innocent man's entire corporate legacy just so she can have a skyline view while recovering from her third failed marriage. So do the smart thing and pay up. Caroline. Amanda sneers, leaning in close. Do not try to fight this. You do not have the leverage, and you certainly do not have the guts to watch your husband's empire burn to the ground. You have exactly 48 hours to wire the funds to Caldwell Enterprises and finalize the deed for my penthouse. If the money is not in our accounts by then, the default becomes public, the scandal hits the press, and Isaiah loses everything. Time is ticking. Amanda takes a victorious step back. She raises her mimosa glass in a mock toast, her lips curled into a triumphant smirk. She fully believes she holds all the power. She thinks she has cornered the boring, quiet data analyst sister she spent her entire life underestimating. She thinks her threats have terrified me into absolute submission. I do not scream. I do not beg her to reconsider. I do not point out the sheer insanity of threatening a forensic financial analyst and a debt restructuring titan. I simply look at her absorbing the full extent of her complicity. She is not just a spoiled beneficiary of my parents' crimes. She is an active participant in this extortion. She has firmly cemented herself to their sinking ship. I reach for the heavy door handle of my car. "Enjoy your morning drink, Amanda," I say softly to her. I open the car door and slide into the driver's seat. I start the engine, the powerful hum of the motor drowning out whatever smug remarks she attempts to throw back at me. I put the car in gear and drive down the long, sweeping driveway. I watch her in the rearview mirror, standing on the pristine lawn, completely oblivious to the catastrophic reality rapidly hurtling toward her. The heavy wrought iron gates of the Caldwell estate slide shut behind my car with a final metallic clang. It is the sound of a vault locking. I merge onto the tree-lined suburban street, gripping the leather steering wheel. Any normal person who just discovered their family committed felony identity theft against them, followed immediately by a brutal extortion attempt, would likely pull over and collapse. A normal daughter would weep, hyperventilate, or scream at the betrayal. I do none of those things. The girl who once cried over their rejection died 10 years ago. The woman sitting in this car is a seasoned forensic data analyst who has spent a decade swimming with corporate sharks. I do not feel sorrow. I do not feel heartbreak. I feel an absolute freezing shift into clinical logic. The emotional cortex of my brain shuts down completely, replaced by the ruthlessly efficient processing power of a Wall Street tactician. My parents and my sister just made the greatest miscalculation of their pathetic lives. They assumed my silence in that sunroom was submission. They interpreted my lack of hysterics as a sign of terror. They fundamentally failed to realize that I was simply cataloging their threats, assessing their vulnerabilities, and calculating the exact velocity required to obliterate their entire existence. I reach forward and tap the touchscreen on my dashboard. The digital display glows, connecting to the secure satellite network Isaiah installed in all our vehicles. I press the speed dial icon for my husband. The line rings exactly once before he answers. His voice fills the quiet cabin of the car, deep, steady, and sharply alert. "Are you safe?" Isaiah asks immediately. He does not ask how the visit went or if I am crying. He knows me too well for that. He hears the quiet rhythm of my breathing and understands the battle lines have been officially drawn. "I am perfectly safe," I reply, keeping my eyes fixed on the road ahead, but they are completely unhinged. Harrison and Beatrice admitted to the identity theft. They confirmed the forged signatures on the $5 million commercial loan. But instead of begging for mercy, they escalated. They are threatening to intentionally default on the entire balance by the end of next week. Isaiah remains silent on the other end of the line, absorbing the data. I continue delivering the facts with cold precision. They know my name is tied to the debt. They plan to use the impending foreclosure to drag my credit into the gutter. Beatrice explicitly threatened to weaponize the default to destroy your initial public offering. She wants to leak the scandal to the press, framing you as a fraudulent CEO with a financially ruined wife. Amanda was waiting in the driveway to demand a $2 million penthouse as her personal hush money. They gave us exactly 48 hours to wire a total of $5 million into their accounts to stop the default. A low, dangerous chuckle rumbles through the car speakers. Isaiah is not intimidated by their extortion. He is amused by their sheer suicidal arrogance. 48 hours he repeats the amusement, fading into a tone of absolute corporate lethargy. They really think they can extort a financial technology firm poised for $1 billion market debut. They are relying on my love for you to force my hand, I tell him. They expect us to panic and pay the ransom to protect your legacy, Isaiah. I need you to listen to me very carefully. I take a slow, measured breath, letting the final shreds of my biological family ties dissolve into the cold morning air. Activate Plan B. Consider it activated. Isaiah responds, his voice shifting into the authoritative cadence of a chief executive officer preparing for a hostile takeover. I am mobilizing the legal and financial teams right now. Get back to the estate, Caroline. We have a corporate execution to orchestrate. I end the call. The gears of legal and financial destruction are officially set into motion. I press down on the accelerator, the engine roaring as I merge onto the highway leading back to the city. I mentally map out the precise sequence of events that will unfold over the next 2 days. Harrison Caldwell thinks his impending loan default is his ultimate leverage. He thinks the predatory bank holding his note will simply follow standard foreclosure protocols, giving him enough time to bleed us dry. He does not understand the aggressive shadow maneuvers available to the ultra-wealthy. We are not going to wait for his bank to issue a public notice of default. We are going to buy the bank out entirely. I navigate the morning traffic with laser focus. My parents built their entire identity on the illusion of superiority, wielding their country club status like a shield. They believed their whiteness, their gated community, and their inherited arrogance made them untouchable. They looked at my black husband and saw an easy target. They looked at me and saw a weak, compliant child. They are about to learn a devastating lesson in modern financial warfare. By the time the 48-hour deadline expires, we will not just expose their fraud. We will own every single asset they possess. I pull into the private gates of our estate, the heavy security doors sliding open to welcome me back to the fortress I built with the man I chose. I step out of the car, my posture rigid, my mind calculating the final variables. I stride confidently toward the grand entrance, leaving behind any lingering doubt. My resolve is absolute. They wanted a war, and I will deliver it. The time for negotiating is over. The time for absolute systematic ruin has begun. I stride through the massive double doors, my shoes clicking sharply against the marble floor. The morning's quiet serenity is gone, replaced by the electric energy of a corporate war room. Isaiah has wasted absolutely no time. He sits at the dining table, now covered in secure laptops and encrypted dossiers. His chief financial officer and attorneys are logged into a video conference on the wall monitor. Isaiah looks up as I enter. He ignores my emotional state. He reads my lethal determination and gives a sharp nod. Sit, he instructs, pulling out a chair. We have 46 hours to execute the acquisition before they initiate their planned default. I take my seat, shifting into my role. I log into the encrypted network. Explain the leverage, I say, looking at the glowing screens. We know the debt is held by a predatory commercial lender. How do we extract the promissory note without triggering alarms? Isaiah leans forward, interlocking his fingers. The firm holding their toxic debt is a regional bank facing massive liquidity issues. They are over-leveraged, and their quarterly regulatory review is next week. A $5 million delinquent loan is a massive liability. They are desperate to offload bad debt to avoid federal scrutiny. I pull up the bank's filings. They are bleeding cash, I confirm. Their commercial default rate has spiked 12% this quarter. If they report Caldwell Enterprises as another massive failure, their stock price will plummet. They are terrified. Exactly, Isaiah says, a cold, predatory smile forming on his lips. They will sell that debt at a steep discount to anyone handing them liquid capital, and that is precisely where we step in. Isaiah turns his attention to the video conference screen, addressing his chief financial officer. Initiate the shadow acquisition. Use our offshore hedge fund. Make sure the purchasing entity is completely anonymized. Harrison cannot know we are buying his execution block. The CFO nods. We are drafting the purchase agreement now. We will approach the regional bank as an aggressive, distressed debt buyer. Given their liquidity crisis, what is our opening bid? Isaiah does not hesitate. Offer them $1.5 million in pure cash available for immediate wire transfer by noon today. The room goes silent for a fraction of a second. The audacity of the offer is staggering. I look at Isaiah, my mind calculating the sheer brutality of the maneuver. Buying a $5 million secured commercial loan for $1.5 million is paying pennies on the dollar. It is an insulting offer, but Isaiah knows exactly how to exploit corporate desperation. They will take it, I state confidently, projecting the bank's risk analysis onto the main monitor. They cannot afford to negotiate. A $1.5 million cash injection right before their quarterly review will save their balance sheet. They will gladly swallow the loss to eliminate the toxic asset. The CFO types furiously. Offer submitted. Now we wait. The next 2 hours are a masterclass in psychological warfare and high-level financial manipulation. Isaiah paces the room, his phone glued to his ear, navigating the shadow channels of corporate debt acquisition. He speaks in a rapid, aggressive cadence, ruthlessly dismantling the regional bank's initial attempts to counteroffer. He reminds them of their impending regulatory audit, twisting the knife with surgical precision. I sit at my terminal monitoring the data flow, ensuring that my forged signature on the original promissory note is legally transferred intact along with the debt portfolio. If we own the debt, we own the forgery, meaning Harrison and Beatrice can no longer weaponize my identity against me. At precisely 11:14 in the morning, the CFO's voice crackles through the video conference speakers. We have a binding agreement. The regional bank has accepted the $1.5 million cash offer. The electronic transfer is complete. The promissory note, including all associated collateral and guarantees, has been officially reassigned to our anonymous hedge fund. Isaiah stops pacing. He looks at me, his dark eyes burning with absolute triumph. He walks over to the table and taps a single key on my laptop. A heavily encrypted PDF file downloads onto my screen. It is the official legal transfer of the $5 million Caldwell Enterprises debt. I stare at the document. The implications are earth-shattering. Just hours ago, I was standing in a sunroom being extorted by 2 arrogant bigots who thought they held my entire future hostage. They threatened to destroy my husband's impending public offering by dragging my name through a high-profile commercial default. They demanded $3 million in pure ransom to save us from their own fraudulent crimes. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they controlled the board. They were spectacularly wrong. By transferring the debt to an anonymous hedge fund that we wholly control, Isaiah and I have instantly neutralized their blackmail. The bank is no longer a threat. The risk to Isaiah's public offering is completely eradicated. We are no longer the frightened victims reacting to a hostile extortion attempt. I reach out and touch the screen, tracing the digital outline of the debt assignment. We just bought my parents' entire financial existence for $1.5 million. I whisper, the reality settling heavily in my chest. Isaiah steps behind my chair and rests his hands firmly on my shoulders. No, Caroline, he corrects me, his voice a low, terrifying rumble. We did not just buy their existence, we bought their execution. Harrison and Beatrice are no longer dealing with a desperate regional bank. They are dealing with us. We are their sole creditors now. We own the mortgage on their failing company. We own the leverage on their assets. And most importantly, we own the undeniable proof of their felony identity theft. The power dynamic has violently and permanently shifted. They think they have 48 hours left to extract their ransom. Let them keep dreaming. I checked my watch. We were 3 hours into the 48-hour countdown they had so arrogantly imposed. I grabbed my encrypted hard drive, slipping it into my leather briefcase. Isaiah had already coordinated a meeting through his corporate counsel. We were bypassing local authorities entirely. Identity theft involving a $5 million commercial loan crossing state banking lines fell under federal jurisdiction. I kissed Isaiah, promising to update him, and walked out to my waiting car. The meeting took place in a windowless conference room inside a federal building downtown. Isaiah's attorney sat beside me. Across the steel table sat Agent Vance, a financial crimes investigator with the FBI, and Dr. Eris Thorne, a top-tier forensic handwriting analyst. They did not deal in family drama. They dealt in irrefutable evidence and federal indictments. I connected my hard drive to the laptop. I am Caroline Caldwell. I began, my voice detached. 7 years ago, Harrison and Beatrice Caldwell initiated a $5 million commercial loan. They required a pristine guarantor. I had been estranged from them for 3 years prior to this transaction. They used my social security number and forged my signature to execute the loan documents without my knowledge or consent. Agent Vance folded his hands. Those are severe allegations, Mrs. Caldwell. A corporate loan of that magnitude involves extensive verification. How did they bypass the notary requirements, and more importantly, how can you definitively prove you were not present? I tapped my keyboard, projecting my screen onto the wall monitor. I expected this level of scrutiny, which is why I did not come empty-handed. First, let us look at the digital footprint. Last night I accessed the raw server data from Caldwell Enterprises. I pulled the internal audit logs from the exact date the loan was originated and digitally filed. I highlighted a specific string of data on the screen. The electronic transmission of the promissory note originated from a static IP address registered to the Caldwell Enterprises executive suite. The digital timestamp shows the document was signed and uploaded at 2:14 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I pulled up a second document alongside it. This is a verified building access log from my former employer located 300 miles away. At 2:14 that afternoon, I was logged into a secure terminal in a different state. It was physically impossible for me to sign that document. Agent Vance leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he scrutinized the cross-referenced timestamps. The geographical discrepancy is compelling, he noted, but physical absence does not entirely rule out authorized electronic consent. We need to prove the signature itself is a hostile forgery. That is where I come in, Dr. Thorne interjected, sliding a thick, transparent folder onto the table. He extracted a high-resolution magnification of the signature on the promissory note and placed it next to a dozen verified samples of my actual signature. At first glance, the forgery is a decent imitation. It mimics the general slant and sizing of your handwriting. However, a forensic analysis reveals catastrophic inconsistencies under microscopic pressure testing. Dr. Thorne pointed to the curvature of the letter C. Your natural signature possesses a fluid, uninterrupted momentum. The pen never hesitates. The signature on this loan document shows microscopic ink pooling at the apex of the curves. This indicates hesitation, a conscious effort by the writer to copy a shape rather than naturally execute it. Furthermore, we analyze the pen pressure. He pulled out 2 additional signature samples, placing them on the table. These are verified signatures from Harrison and Beatrice Caldwell. When we map the biomechanical pressure applied to the forged document, it perfectly matches Harrison Caldwell's distinct heavy-handed downstrokes. Additionally, the looping structure on the tail end is a stylistic match to Beatrice Caldwell's handwriting. They collaborated on the forgery. Harrison executed the primary lettering, and Beatrice notarized the document using a fraudulent corporate stamp she controlled. The silence in the room was absolute. The evidence was not circumstantial. It was a mathematical and biometric certainty. My parents had left a glaring, undeniable trail of fraud. Agent Vance reviewed the forensic report, his expression hardening into professional resolve. The combination of the geographic digital timestamps and the biometric handwriting analysis provides us with airtight probable cause. This is a textbook case of aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Isaiah's attorney leaned forward, interlacing his fingers. How quickly can we secure an indictment, Agent Vance? My client is currently being extorted by the suspects. They have threatened to intentionally default on this fraudulent loan by the end of the week to deliberately trigger a financial scandal aimed at destroying her husband's impending corporate public offering. Agent Vance's jaw tightened at the mention of the extortion. He pulled a fresh legal pad toward him. Wire fraud carrying a multi-million-dollar liability gets priority tracking. I will take this directly to the United States Attorney this afternoon. Given the flight risk and the ongoing extortion attempt, we can fast-track a sealed indictment. We will have federal arrest warrants signed by a judge within 24 hours. I looked at the digital clock. We were now 6 hours into their 48-hour ultimatum. Harrison and Beatrice were likely sitting in their sunroom completely convinced they had trapped me. They were measuring the drapes for Amanda's extortion penthouse, oblivious to the fact that I had just handed a federal investigator the exact coordinates to drop a tactical strike on their entire lives. We will coordinate the execution of the warrants with your timeline. Agent Vance told me, his tone conveying a deep, unspoken respect for the arsenal of evidence I had meticulously assembled. When do you want us to move in? I closed my laptop, the screen going black. They are hosting a corporate gala tomorrow night to celebrate their supposed financial rescue. I said, my voice as cold and sharp as cracked ice. I want you to walk through the front doors of the Ritz-Carlton, right in the middle of Harrison Caldwell's keynote speech. Let him feel exactly what it is like to lose his reputation, his freedom, and his empire, all at the exact same moment. I stood up, shaking hands with the 3 men in the room. I walked out of the federal building and stepped out into the bright, blinding sunlight of the beautiful city. I was now fully armed. The trap was finally set. The clock was ticking and absolute devastation was rapidly coming for them. I settled into the ergonomic chair behind my desk and brought my dual monitors back to life. Isaiah walked into the room carrying 2 large glasses of iced water. He handed me one and leaned gently against the edge of the desk, crossing his strong arms. We had 24 hours left before the deadline they had so arrogantly imposed on us expired. In the world of high finance, a 24-hour window was an absolute eternity, but for my family it was simply a countdown to their own execution. I opened my secure browser and navigated to my secondary monitor. While the federal investigators were busy drafting the sealed indictments and coordinating the arrest warrants, I decided to run a basic digital surveillance protocol on my family. If they were truly convinced their blackmail scheme was successful, I knew exactly how they would behave. They lacked discipline. They lacked impulse control. The Caldwell family operated on the toxic belief that looking wealthy was far more important than actually being wealthy. I typed Amanda's handle into the social media tracking software I used for market sentiment analysis. The results populated instantly, flooding my screen with high-resolution photos and live video streams. Amanda was not hiding in shame after participating in a federal extortion plot. She was celebrating. My sister was live streaming from the showroom floor of an exclusive imported auto dealership downtown. She was wearing designer sunglasses indoors, panning her phone camera across the sleek hood of a custom white Bentley Continental. Her voice echoed through my office speakers, high-pitched and dripping with unearned superiority. She told her followers that she was treating herself to a post-divorce upgrade. She proudly patted the leather interior of the vehicle, announcing that her new downtown penthouse required a car that perfectly matched its aesthetic. I watched in absolute silence as Amanda signed a lease agreement on camera. She was using her maximum credit allowance to secure the vehicle, entirely banking on the $2 million hush money she demanded from me. She genuinely believed the wire transfer would clear by tomorrow afternoon. She was digging a financial grave so deep she would never climb out of it, and she was broadcasting her own burial to the entire internet. Isaiah watched the screen, shaking his head in mild disgust. The hubris is staggering, he noted, his voice extremely quiet. She is spending phantom capital. When our hedge fund freezes Caldwell Enterprises' assets tomorrow night, that dealership will repossess the vehicle before she even figures out how to program the navigation system. I closed the video stream and pulled up a completely different dataset. Amanda is not the only one spending phantom capital, I replied, accessing the public event registry for the most elite country club in the state. Beatrice has been busy today as well. I highlighted a newly registered event on the screen. My mother had just booked the grand ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton for tomorrow evening. The event title was registered as the Caldwell Enterprises Expansion Gala. She had ordered premium catering, top-tier champagne, and a live orchestra. The massive deposit alone would have maxed out whatever remaining credit Harrison had left on his corporate cards. Beatrice was throwing a massive, ostentatious party to celebrate the company's bright future. She had invited hundreds of wealthy socialites, local politicians, and potential investors. She wanted to stand on a stage and announce that Caldwell Enterprises had secured a massive new influx of capital from an anonymous benefactor, completely masking the fact that she was extorting her own daughter to cover up a felony. "They are doubling down on the illusion," I explained, leaning back in my leather chair. "Beatrice wants to look invincible. She thinks that by hosting this gala, she is proving to the elite circles that Harrison has successfully navigated the market downturn. She is constructing a grand pedestal for herself, completely oblivious to the fact that we have already sawed the legs off of it." Isaiah chuckled a dark, resonant sound. "They are literally paying to host their own public execution. The FBI agents will not even have to hunt them down. Harrison and Beatrice are gathering themselves along with all their high-profile witnesses into one perfectly lit ballroom. It is a tactical gift." I nodded, minimizing the windows on my monitor. The sheer arrogance of their actions erased any lingering microscopic sliver of sympathy I might have had left in my body. They did not care about the damage they were doing. They did not care that their actions could have ruined Isaiah's public offering or destroyed my career. They only cared about their image, their luxury cars, and their country club status. They were perfectly willing to burn my life to the ground to keep themselves warm. The evening rolled in, casting long shadows across the estate. Isaiah and I moved to the dining room, sharing a quiet meal prepared by our private chef. We avoided discussing the impending confrontation over dinner. We talked about his company, about the incredible valuation numbers rolling in from the underwriters, and about the future we were building together. We were calm, grounded, and entirely unified. As I lay in bed that night, the soft glow of the city lights reflecting off the ceiling, my phone vibrated on the nightstand. It was an automated email notification from the federal task force. The subject line was brief and clinical. The arrest warrants for Harrison and Beatrice Caldwell had been officially signed by a federal judge. The Financial Crimes Unit was mobilized and ready for deployment. I locked my phone and set it down. The 48-hour deadline they had given me was drawing to a rapid close. Tomorrow, they would wake up believing they were the kings and queens of the city. They would dress in their finest evening wear, put on their most arrogant smiles, and walk into that ballroom expecting to receive a $3 million ransom. They would stand in front of their wealthy peers completely convinced of their own supremacy. I closed my eyes, a sense of absolute tranquility washing over me. Tomorrow night, the Caldwell legacy would end, not with a quiet whimper in a courtroom, but with a catastrophic, deafening crash on the grandest stage they could possibly afford. I drifted off to sleep under the protective roof of the empire my husband built, ready to watch my family fall. Section exactly 1,000 words. The lobby of the Ritz-Carlton was a cathedral of marble and gold leaf filled with the soft clinking of champagne flutes and the hum of orchestrated social ambition. The gala was an invitation-only affair packed with the city's most influential real estate developers and local politicians. At the center of this gathering stood Beatrice and Harrison. They were radiant in their performance. Harrison wore a tuxedo tailored to perfection, his hand gripping the podium with the confidence of a man who believed he had just secured his salvation. Beatrice greeted guests with a practiced, elegant poise, her laughter ringing out across the ballroom as she whispered to a board member about the bright future awaiting Caldwell Enterprises. They had every reason to believe they were untouchable. According to their calculation, my silence had been purchased. They had no idea that while they were busy selecting the expensive floral arrangements for this ballroom, their entire legal and financial reality had been dismantled. I watched them from the back of the room, standing beside Isaiah. I wore a backless midnight blue silk gown, my hair styled in an effortless, sophisticated wave. I looked like a woman who had never spent a single night in a studio apartment eating ramen, and I felt like a woman who had never been more in control of her own destiny. Isaiah looked impeccable in a custom charcoal tuxedo. He caught my eye and offered a brief, reassuring nod. We moved into the center of the room, creating a subtle ripple of recognition among the crowd. People began to turn. Conversations quieted. Some recognized Isaiah as the visionary founder behind the upcoming tech IPO. Others simply stared, trying to place the face of the woman who had once been the black sheep of the Caldwell family. We navigated the room with the measured, steady grace of two people who owned the very air they breathed. Beatrice spotted us. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly masked it with a veneer of triumph. She likely assumed we were here to hand over the wire transfer confirmation, perhaps hoping for a quiet, private moment before she climbed onto the podium. She glided across the floor, her movements fluid and predatory, dragging Harrison in her wake. Amanda followed closely, her expression a mix of smug relief and simmering resentment. "You actually showed up," Beatrice said, her voice loud enough for the board members nearby to hear. "I assume you have finally done the smart thing, Caroline. You look lovely, by the way. Very sophisticated for someone who prefers sitting behind a computer screen." I met her gaze. "I am here to witness the conclusion of this evening, Beatrice." Harrison looked at his watch, his impatience leaking through his composed exterior. "We have a schedule to keep," he said, his eyes flicking toward the podium. "We are about to make our keynote announcement regarding the expansion of our real estate portfolio. I hope you brought the verification documents we discussed." I maintained my composure, my heartbeat a steady rhythmic pulse of anticipation. "You will have your answer before the night is through, Harrison." Beatrice gave a sharp, triumphant nod, clearly interpreting my words as a promise of the transfer. She turned to the crowd, raising her glass. The room fell into a hush as she beckoned to the orchestra to lower their volume. She stepped onto the stage, her presence demanding immediate attention. "Welcome, everyone," Beatrice announced, her voice filled with practiced warmth. "This year has brought Caldwell Enterprises unprecedented challenges, but also incredible new opportunities. We have secured the necessary partnerships to ensure our future is not just stable, but explosive in its growth." The crowd broke into polite, expectant applause. She gestured toward the back of the ballroom. "I am thrilled to announce that we are in final negotiations with an anonymous firm that believes deeply in our vision. This injection of capital will redefine the state's suburban commercial landscape for decades to come." She looked directly at me. I felt the gaze of the entire ballroom. They were all waiting for some reaction, some sign of whether I was an ally or an adversary. I simply stood with Isaiah, my posture relaxed, my expression one of calm observation. Harrison stepped up to the podium, taking the microphone from Beatrice. He looked out at the guests, his chest puffed with unearned pride. "Tonight we celebrate the power of family," he declared. "We celebrate a legacy built on generations of hard work and unwavering vision. We celebrate the strength of our connections." The irony was so thick it was almost a physical weight. Harrison spoke of strength while he was currently bankrupt and facing federal prison. He spoke of family while he had spent years attempting to extort his own daughter. He spoke of vision while he was completely blind to the fact that he was standing on a trapdoor that was about to swing open. I leaned into Isaiah. "The timing," I whispered. Isaiah checked his phone. "The federal team is in the loading bay. They are waiting for the final word from the U.S. attorney. The indictment is live." Harrison launched into a long, rambling story about the early days of Caldwell Enterprises, clearly trying to drag out the tension. He was milking every second of his perceived victory. Amanda stood off to the side, looking bored, scrolling through her phone. She was likely checking her bank account, waiting for the notification that the $3 million had arrived. The air in the ballroom felt heavy. I knew that in less than 10 minutes, everything would change forever. The guests would watch their heroes turn into criminals. The reputation Harrison had spent 40 years building would be reduced to ash. I reached out and took Isaiah's hand. We stood perfectly still, two islands of calm, in a room filled with people about to have their reality shattered. The countdown to the final strike had reached its absolute limit. Harrison was about to reach the climax of his speech, and I was about to deliver the truth. Section exactly 1,000 words. Harrison adjusted the microphone, his voice booming with forced charisma that filled every corner of the Ritz-Carlton ballroom. He looked like the triumphant king of his own deluded domain. He gestured expansively toward the room, his eyes scanning the faces of investors and local politicians he had spent a lifetime trying to impress. He was absolutely convinced that his performance was flawless. He truly believed he had bullied us into submission, and that the next 5 minutes would cement his status as a man who could turn any disaster into a victory. He turned toward Isaiah and me, his smile wide and teeth bright under the stage lights. As I look out at this room, I am reminded that the heart of Caldwell Enterprises has always been its people. But tonight, I am particularly honored to recognize the future of our firm. The future of this company is not just in real estate. It is in the groundbreaking innovations being led by the next generation. My skin crawled as he began to weave his web of lies. He moved with the grace of a seasoned politician expertly playing to the audience. He spoke about his deep commitment to diversity inclusion and the modern financial landscape. He threw around buzzwords about community impact and global reach, while his real estate empire was literally hours away from being seized by federal authorities. It was a masterclass in performative gaslighting. He paused for effect, glancing over his shoulder toward where I stood. And what better example of this new era than the young man standing by my side? He motioned toward Isaiah. My son-in-law, Isaiah, a brilliant leader in his own right. Someone who understands that family is the bedrock upon which all successful enterprises are built. A ripple of polite, confused applause moved through the crowd. The socialites here had whispered about my marriage for a decade, calling it a social tragedy. Now Harrison was reframing it as a strategic asset. He was using the very thing he had once tried to destroy to build his own temporary sanctuary of legitimacy. Isaiah remained perfectly still. I could feel the tension radiating off him, a tightly coiled spring ready to snap. But he stood his ground, his face a mask of polite indifference. He knew the choreography of this public execution just as well as I did. He was waiting for the exact microsecond when the trap would close around Harrison's throat. Harrison reached into his breast pocket and produced a thick, high-quality envelope. He held it up like a trophy. I would like to invite Isaiah to the podium to accept this initial partnership commitment. This isn't just about business. It is about a father welcoming his family back into the fold. It is about showing this city what we can achieve when we unite our strengths. The pressure in the room was immense. Harrison was utilizing every trick in the book of high society optics. He was essentially daring Isaiah to refuse him in front of the city's most powerful elite. He was betting that Isaiah would prioritize public decorum and social niceties over the truth. He was counting on the fact that Isaiah would be too polite to reject a father-in-law publicly, especially when money was supposedly being presented as a gesture of peace. The crowd began to clap again, louder this time. A few people started whistling. The pressure was mounting. I looked at Isaiah. He did not move. He did not look intimidated. He looked patient, like a man watching a train wreck unfold in slow motion. He saw the hypocrisy for exactly what it was. He saw that Harrison was not offering peace. He was offering a shackle, a way to drag Isaiah and me into his sinking ship. Harrison beckoned him again, his smile straining at the edges, his hand outstretched with the envelope. Come on, Isaiah. Do not be shy. We have investors waiting for this partnership to be confirmed. The crowd's anticipation was suffocating. Every pair of eyes in the room was fixed on the stage, waiting to see if the young, wealthy fintech CEO would accept the olive branch. I glanced at the side door of the ballroom. A tactical team of federal agents was positioned in the shadows, their presence masked by the heavy velvet curtains and the dimly lit service hallway. They were waiting for Isaiah to signal the end of the farce. They were waiting for the moment the extortion turned into a public confession of intent to defraud. Isaiah started to move. He walked with a slow, deliberate pace toward the stage, his steps rhythmic and soundless against the plush carpet. Harrison grew even more triumphant, his posture straightening. He was absolutely sure he had won. He believed he had neutralized the threat by incorporating us into his lie. He thought he had bought our silence with a fake check in a fancy envelope. Isaiah ascended the steps. He looked down at the crowd, then at Harrison. He didn't look like a son-in-law coming to accept a check. He looked like the man who owned the debt. He looked like the man who held the key to the iron cage. The ballroom lights caught the sharp angle of his jaw, the absolute clarity in his eyes. Harrison stood there, hand-out eyes gleaming with predatory hunger. The entire room hung on the next words. The silence was so profound that even the string quartet seemed to stop breathing. Isaiah stood at the microphone, the feedback whine echoing briefly through the hall. He looked at the paper in his hand, then at the man who had abandoned his daughter and called it a social disgrace. The countdown had finally hit 0. Everything was about to change. Isaiah stands at the microphone, the heavy envelope still gripped in his hand. He ignores Harrison's outstretched palm entirely. Instead, he turns his head toward the massive LED screen positioned behind the stage, which had been displaying a looping montage of the company's visionary real estate projects. With a sharp tap on his tablet, Isaiah kills the video. The ballroom plunges into a heavy, confused silence. Then a document fills the screen. It is not a check. It is not an investor agreement. It is a high-resolution certified legal order of default and foreclosure stamped with the seal of the Superior Court and a federal bankruptcy filing notification. "I am not your investor," Isaiah says, his voice cutting through the hall like a blade. "My firm is your sole creditor." The room gasps. Harrison freezes his hands, still suspended in midair, his smile dying a painful public death. He stares up at the screen, his face turning an alarming shade of gray as he recognizes the legal header. "You are in default." Isaiah continues, his tone devoid of any emotion, purely professional and utterly cold. "The acquisition of your commercial debt portfolio was finalized 48 hours ago. As of this moment, Caldwell Enterprises is legally insolvent. The seizure of all assets associated with the $5 million promissory note is effective immediately." Pandemonium erupts. It is not a polite corporate disagreement, it is a total social collapse. A dozen people at the front tables stand up at once. Investors begin shouting, demanding to know what happened to their capital. Local politicians look at one another with terrified expressions, realizing they are currently standing in a ballroom hosting a bankrupt, soon-to-be criminal enterprise. Harrison drops the microphone. It hits the stage floor with a screeching burst of feedback that makes the guests cover their ears. He lunges for the podium, his composure shredded. "That is a lie. That is a fabricated document," he yells, his voice cracking with panic. He looks wildly at the security team at the back of the room, but the men in dark suits do not move. They are not his security. I walk slowly toward the stage, my heels rhythmic and deliberate against the stage floor. I stand next to Isaiah. Beatrice has pushed her way to the front, her manicured hands clawing at her throat. She looks at me, her eyes wild with a mixture of hatred and absolute terror. "Caroline, fix this," she screams, her voice losing all its refined country club polish. "Tell them it is a mistake. Tell them you didn't do this." I look down at her from the stage. The power dynamic has completely inverted. She is no longer the matriarch of an empire. She is a desperate woman, about to lose everything. "I didn't do this, Beatrice," I say, my voice carrying clearly to the front rows. "You did. You built an empire on fraud and entitlement. You thought you could trade my identity to cover your financial incompetence. You were wrong." The board members are huddled together, whispering. The trust they placed in the Caldwell name has evaporated in seconds. One of the primary investors, a man who had been praising Harrison's leadership 20 minutes ago, storms toward the podium. "Harrison, explain this. Where is our capital? Did you actually use a forgery to secure a loan? Is the company completely hollow?" The question hangs in the air, a lethal accusation. Harrison cannot answer. He looks like he is about to have a heart attack, his chest heaving, his eyes darting toward the exits. He is cornered by the very people he spent his life trying to impress. "It gets worse," Isaiah adds, his voice amplifying the chaos. "Because the documents on the screen are public record, I have also provided the Department of Justice with proof of the forged signatures and the identity theft committed against Caroline Caldwell." The word theft triggers a fresh wave of shouting. People are pulling out their phones, frantically recording the scene. The prestigious gala has officially become a crime scene. A woman near the front table begins to laugh hysterically, the sound high and sharp. The realization that they have been drinking champagne and eating lobster while surrounded by a crumbling financial scandal is too much for the room to handle. I look at Amanda, who is standing near the side exit trying to slip away unnoticed. I make eye contact with her. She freezes. Amanda, I say, my voice calm. Your penthouse isn't in your name. It's in the estate's receivership. I wouldn't bother with the keys. She turns and sprints for the door, tripping over her own expensive heels. She leaves behind her designer purse, her phone, and her dignity. She is running from a disaster she helped create, but there is no exit strategy from a federal investigation. The chaos is deafening now. The orchestra has stopped playing. The waiters have abandoned their trays, watching the implosion with open-mouthed fascination. This is the death of the Caldwell name. It is not happening behind closed doors, and it is not being managed by a PR firm. It is happening in the full light of day, witnessed by the very people Harrison used to validate his existence. I take the microphone from Isaiah. The room settles slightly, desperate for a narrative, desperate for an explanation. Caldwell Enterprises operated on a foundation of lies, I tell the room. They believed that their status made them immune to the law. They believed that my family loyalty could be bought with a threat. They were wrong. The company is officially under new management. Effective immediately, every asset is being liquidated to satisfy our claims. I step down from the stage, my hand firmly in Isaiah's. We walk toward the exit, moving through the crowd as the people part like a sea. They are too stunned to shout, too horrified to cheer. They are watching a titan fall. Beatrice reaches out to grab my arm, her face a mask of ruined vanity. Caroline, we can talk about this, please. I do not stop. I do not look back. We reach the doors, the cool night air of the city waiting for us. Behind us, the ballroom is a nightmare of shouting and confusion. The empire is burning, and I am finally blissfully walking away from the fire. The ballroom has descended into a level of bedlam that no amount of expensive catering or soft jazz could possibly mask. Beatrice is still hyperventilating, her mascara tracing dark, jagged paths down her cheeks as she clutches at my dress. She is not begging for my forgiveness anymore. She is frantically trying to drag me into the abyss with her. If I fall, you fall with me. Caroline. Beatrice shrieks, her voice echoing off the high, ornate ceilings. Everyone needs to know. This is not just our debt. My daughter is the co-signer on the $5 million loan. She is just as liable as we are. The investors are already surging forward, a wall of angry faces and shouting voices closing in on the stage. They are looking for someone to hold responsible, and Beatrice is more than happy to feed me to the wolves if it buys her a moment of relief. I do not recoil from her grip. I reach up and peel her clawed fingers off my shoulder with clinical, detached strength. I step past her, my heels making a singular, sharp sound as I reach the center of the podium. I look out at the sea of panicked faces, the men who thought they were investing in a real estate empire, the politicians who thought they were currying favor with a pillar of the community, and the socialites who thought they were attending a celebration of success. I take the microphone. My voice is steady, amplified by the house speakers until it fills every corner of the vast room. My mother is correct about one thing, I begin. There is a co-signer on the $5 million promissory note. The room holds its breath. Harrison looks up, his face hopeful for a split second, believing I am about to admit defeat. But my signature on that document was not written by me. I continue. I pull the forensic analysis report out of my briefcase and lift it for the room to see. 7 years ago, while I was living 300 miles away and working a minimum wage job to survive, my parents used my social security number to act as a guarantor for a loan I never knew existed. They committed felony identity theft. They forged my signature to secure capital they were never qualified to receive on their own. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. This is not a dispute over a bridge loan. I say, my eyes locking onto Beatrice, who is now swaying on her feet. This is a federal criminal investigation. I glance toward the back of the ballroom. I signal the team of federal agents standing near the service entrance. They begin to move forward, their presence immediate and terrifying. I have already turned over the original promissory note, the handwriting analysis, and the digital access logs to the Department of Justice. I announce, letting the words sink in. The FBI and the Financial Crimes Unit are currently waiting in the lobby to take statements from the primary suspects in this case. Beatrice looks toward the lobby doors, her eyes wide with mounting terror. She sees the agents uniformed, grim, and entirely unimpressed by her country club credentials. She realizes that her social life, her image, and her freedom are over. The sheer weight of reality hits her system at once. Her knees buckle and she collapses onto the polished floor of the ballroom. She does not fall with grace. She goes down like a stone, hitting the marble with a sickening, audible thud. The crowd instinctively recoils. The board members who had been shouting for their money moments ago now step away from the fallen matriarch as if her desperation were contagious. Harrison scrambles toward her, his face a mask of ruin, but he is intercepted. 2 federal agents reach him before he can even kneel beside her. Harrison Caldwell. I am Agent Vance with the FBI. One of them says, his voice flat and professional. We are executing a warrant for your arrest regarding charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Harrison does not put up a fight. He seems to have lost the ability to move. His shoulders slump forward, his expensive tuxedo appearing suddenly oversized and ridiculous on his diminished frame. He stares blankly at the floor as the agents place the cold steel cuffs on his wrists. The click of the locking mechanism is the loudest sound in the room. Amanda, standing near the bar, tries to sprint toward the service elevator. She does not get 3 steps before another agent blocks her path. Amanda Caldwell, you are also being detained for questioning regarding your role in the embezzlement of company funds, the agent says, stepping firmly into her path. I do not look at them. I do not watch the spectacle of my family being led away in disgrace. I look at Isaiah. He is standing by the edge of the stage, his expression one of profound, quiet pride. We did not need to scream. We did not need to fight their petty games. We simply presented the truth to the people empowered to act on it. The gala has been transformed into a crime scene. Servers are clearing away untouched plates of lobster. Investors are huddled in corners, already calling their own legal teams to figure out how to recoup their losses. My parents, the people who viewed me as a disposable asset, are currently being ushered toward the parking lot in the back of unmarked federal vehicles. I step down from the stage, my silk gown flowing behind me. I walk past the wreckage of the Caldwell legacy, without looking back. My Aunt Lucille, who had been sitting in the 3rd row, stands up as I pass. She looks at me, her expression unreadable. She has spent a lifetime enabling Beatrice, but tonight even she cannot deny the reality. I hope you are satisfied, Caroline, she whispers, though there is no bite to it. I stop and look at her. I am not satisfied, Lucille. Satisfaction implies I enjoyed this. I am simply relieved. The lies are over. The fraud is stopped. And for the first time in my life, I am not responsible for the wreckage they chose to build. I exit through the main doors, the cold night air hitting my face. The chaos inside the Ritz-Carlton is fading behind me. The 48 hours are up. The debt is seized. The arrests are made. I have reclaimed my name, my credit, and my future. And as I walk toward Isaiah's car, I realize that the most powerful thing I have ever done was not the investigation, not the hacking, and not the confrontation. It was simply refusing to let them be the authors of my life any longer. I am Caroline Caldwell, and I have finally stepped out of their shadow. Amanda is still standing near the side exit, her face pale, her hands trembling as she realizes the federal agents are not here to arrest her parents alone. She watches the handcuffs click shut on Harrison with a look of pure animalistic terror. The socialites who were fawning over her 5 minutes ago have now physically pushed her into a circle of isolation. She is no longer the cherished daughter of a real estate mogul. She is a pariah in a crimson dress. She tries one last desperate maneuver. She pushes away from the wall, stumbling toward me, her eyes wet with tears that look far more genuine than the ones she used to manipulate my father. "Caroline, you have to help me," she gasps, reaching out to grab my arm. Her grip is frantic, her nails digging into my silk dress. "You know I didn't know what they were doing. I'm just their daughter. I thought the money was theirs. I had no idea about the fraud. You can't let them take me down with them. I have nothing to do with their business crimes. Tell the agents, tell them I'm innocent. I look at her, my expression completely unmoved. The empathy I might have felt for a younger sister died the moment she tried to extort me for a penthouse while she knew I was fighting for my husband's reputation. I do not pull away, but I do not offer comfort. I simply stand there, an impenetrable wall of hard-won truth. You were not just their daughter, Amanda, I say, my voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. You were their partner in greed. You knew they were leveraged to the point of bankruptcy, yet you still demanded a $2 million penthouse as hush money. You didn't care where the money came from as long as it kept your lifestyle uninterrupted. She shakes her head, her sobs becoming jagged and ugly. I was desperate. My marriage was over. I needed support. I reach into my briefcase, pulling out a second, thinner file. I do not move with haste. I move with the finality of a judge. I drop the file onto the podium. It lands with a heavy slap, the sound echoing through the ballroom. I open the folder not for her, but for the room to see. The data is clear, formatted in a clean, professional audit report that I compiled while Isaiah handled the debt acquisition. This isn't about your parents' commercial loan, I announced to the ballroom. This is about the Caldwell Enterprises internal payroll. Amanda freezes. The color drains from her face until she looks like a wax figure. For the past 18 months, I continue detailing the evidence you have been acting as a consultant for the company's marketing division, despite having zero experience in the sector. You haven't just been drawing a salary, you've been embezzling. You funneled payroll funds meant for junior administrative staff into your personal accounts to cover your private shopping sprees, your high-end car leases, and your legal fees from your 3 failed divorces. I have the bank routing numbers, the dates of every illegal transfer, and the confirmation from the firm's accounting software showing your digital signature on every single unauthorized payroll disbursement. The room is silent. The investors, who are already reeling from the default news, now look at Amanda with undisguised loathing. They have been robbed by the family they were all clamoring to support. Amanda's breathing becomes shallow, her eyes darting toward the exits, but the agents are everywhere. She has nowhere left to run. You can't do this to me, she whimpers, her voice barely audible. The cars, the clothes, they aren't even mine. They're leased. I pull one final sheet from the folder and hold it up. I know they are leased. That is why the court order includes immediate seizure of all assets associated with your lifestyle, including your vehicles and personal property, to begin the process of restitution for the employees you robbed. You wanted a fresh start, Amanda. You wanted to build a new life away from the consequences of your choices. The court will be providing you with exactly that. It just won't be in a penthouse. The domino effect is absolute. The agents move in on her. They do not use the same level of force they used on Harrison, but the result is the same. They guide her away from the ballroom, her expensive heels catching on the carpet, her face a portrait of shattered vanity. She tries to call out for my mother, but Beatrice is currently being helped to her feet by paramedics too broken and humiliated to even look at her daughter. Watching the golden child crumble is not a triumph of spite. It is the final necessary act of purification. The Caldwell name, once a symbol of unearned power and exclusionary arrogance, has been dismantled in less than an hour. The ballroom is no longer a site of celebration. It is a graveyard of secrets. I turn to the guests, my silhouette framed by the golden lights of the Ritz-Carlton. I have nothing left to prove to these people. Their opinions of me shifted the moment I walked on stage as an equal, not as an outcast. They are looking at me with newfound respect, recognizing that the woman they once dismissed as an unfit daughter is now the one holding the gavel. The nightmare that began 10 years ago, the boycott, the silence, the cruel exclusion from a wedding because of Isaiah's background, has reached its logical conclusion. They gambled that I would be their easiest victim. They bet their entire empire on the belief that I was too weak, too loyal, or too afraid to expose the rot at the heart of their family. They were wrong. Every single one of them was wrong. Isaiah stands beside me, his hand finding the small of my back. He leans down, whispering, "They have nothing left, Caroline. We own the debt. We have the indictments. The bank is ours. I nod, looking out at the ruined remains of the gala. My parents and my sister are being taken out of the building, their lives effectively ending in this hotel lobby. And yet I feel no desire to gloat. I have simply restored the balance. They spent a decade trying to erase me, so I spent a decade building a truth they could not silence. I have achieved the ultimate professional and personal victory, not by being better than them, but by being the one who stood in the light of truth while they hid in the shadows of fraud. I leave the stage and walk toward the exit. The gala is dead and the Caldwells are gone. It is time to go home. Section exactly 1,000 words. The transition from the deafening chaos of the gala to the quiet, sterile reality of the aftermath was jarring. 6 months have passed since the night the Caldwell legacy burned to the ground. The news cycle, which once hungrily devoured every scrap of the scandal, has moved on to fresher disasters, leaving my family to face the crushing, slow grind of their new reality. There is no longer a public spectacle. There is only the mundane, relentless misery of the lives they built on deceit. Harrison did not escape the consequences of his arrogance. The federal trial was swift, concluding just 4 months after the gala. The evidence I provided, the digital trails, the forensic handwriting analysis, the loan records left the defense with zero room for maneuver. He was sentenced to 5 years in a federal correctional facility for conspiracy to commit bank fraud and aggravated identity theft. I did not attend the sentencing. I did not send a letter of support, nor did I ask for leniency. I watched the headline appear on my phone screen while sitting in my office at home. It felt like reading a weather report, a cold, objective acknowledgement of a shift in the climate. He had made his choices, and now he was serving his time. Beatrice faced a different kind of imprisonment. Stripped of the assets that defined her worth, she was evicted from the mansion within weeks of the federal seizure. She fought it, of course, filing endless, desperate motions that her remaining funds couldn't actually sustain. But the bank's legal team was as ruthless as the ones we had used. She eventually lost everything. She now resides in a cramped, low-income apartment on the outskirts of the city. I know this because Isaiah keeps a subtle tab on their status purely for security purposes. She has been expelled from the country club, not just for the bankruptcy, but for the social shame of the felony scandal. The women she once lunched with, the women who praised her visionary mothering, now cross the street to avoid her. She is a pariah in the world she worshipped for 30 years. I do not visit her. I do not send financial aid. There is no joy in watching her struggle to navigate a world that doesn't cater to her entitlement, but there is no guilt either. It is simply the logical conclusion of her own behavior. She created an environment of competition and exploitation, and now she is living in the vacuum she manufactured. Amanda's fall has been perhaps the most jagged. The courts ordered immediate restitution, forcing her to pay back every cent she embezzled from the company payroll. She has been barred from holding any executive or management position for a decade. She now works a minimum wage retail job at a suburban shopping mall. I occasionally see reports from friends who live in that area. They mention seeing her standing behind a cash register looking exhausted and unremarkable. She is no longer the golden child. She is just another person working to pay off a mountain of debt haunted by the reputation of her own fraud. The domino effect, as I had predicted, was absolute. The connections they once relied on, the board members, the politicians, the elite socialites, have vanished. They were never friends. They were just nodes in a network of shared profit. When the profit stopped, the network severed. I find that I don't harbor a shred of glee while observing their decline. If I were happy about their suffering, it would mean I still cared enough to judge them. Instead, I observe them with a flat, absolute indifference. They are simply people who have been removed from my life like a corrupted file cleared from a secure server. They occupy 0% of my emotional bandwidth. Isaiah and I have reached a new stage of our life together. The company's IPO was a historic success, making us wealthier than I ever dreamed possible, yet our life remains remarkably grounded. We have expanded our charitable initiatives, focusing on creating educational and legal support structures for children who find themselves in situations similar to what I survived. We do not do it for optics. We do not host galas or issue press releases. We do it because the work is necessary and because it honors the resilience required to pull yourself out of the shadows. My personal life has stabilized into a rhythm of deep, quiet security. I still work as a data analyst, but now I lead my own firm, handpicking clients who share our commitment to ethical transparency. I don't feel the need to prove my success to anyone. I don't need to post on social media to validate my happiness. I find contentment in the mundane, in the way Isaiah makes coffee in the morning and the quiet focus of my office, in the steady rhythmic healing of my own soul. The trauma of my childhood, the scars of the abandonment, and the betrayal of the forged loan, it has all been integrated into the person I am today. I am the woman who realized that family is a choice. I am the woman who understands that money is just a tool, not a measure of character. I am the woman who learned that when you refuse to be a victim, you automatically become the architect of your own victory. Sometimes late at night, I think about the girl in the pale blue bedroom in Fairfield. I think about how scared she was, how desperately she wanted to be enough for people who were fundamentally broken. I want to go back and tell her that she doesn't need their permission to be successful. I want to tell her that the traits they called serious and boring would eventually be the very tools she used to dismantle their arrogance. But I don't need to tell her. I am her, and I survived. The legacy of the Caldwell family is gone, replaced by something I built on my own terms. There are no more secrets, no more forged signatures, and no more ultimatums. There is only the truth, and for the first time in 34 years, the truth is entirely mine to own. I have learned that the greatest freedom isn't found in money or power. It is found in the ability to walk away from people who don't see your value, and in the courage to realize that you are your own greatest support. The aftermath of karma isn't just about their ruin, it's about the peace I found in the space they vacated, and for the first time that peace is permanent. The weekend began with the kind of silence that only true security can provide. We were at our estate perched high above the coastline, where the only sounds were the rhythmic retreat of the tide and the gentle rustle of leaves. Isaiah had been home for 3 days, his company's IPO now firmly cemented in the history books of Wall Street. The numbers were not just astronomical, they were transformative. We had reached a level of financial freedom that most people spend lifetimes chasing, yet as I stood on the deck watching the sunrise, I realized that the numbers on a screen felt remarkably distant compared to the profound internal shift I was experiencing. I held a warm mug of tea, the ceramic radiating heat into my palms. Isaiah stepped out onto the deck behind me, his arms sliding around my waist to pull me closer. He didn't speak, he just let the morning light wash over us. There was no talk of debt portfolios, no legal documents to review, and absolutely no need for the tactical ruthlessness that had defined our lives for the past 6 months. We were simply two people who had weathered an impossible storm and come out standing on the other side. The success of the IPO had opened doors for new philanthropic initiatives, projects that Isaiah and I were now managing together through our own foundation. We weren't just building a financial empire anymore. We were building an infrastructure of support for others. It was a stark contrast to the way the Caldwells had operated, where every transaction was a zero-sum game and every relationship was a chess move. I had spent years of my life believing that my family's toxic version of ambition was the only way to succeed. I was wrong. Success, when divorced from human decency, is just a hollow trophy that eventually burns the person holding it. My mind drifted back to my mother Beatrice in her cramped apartment and Harrison in his prison cell. I thought about the emptiness of their victory lap at the Ritz-Carlton. They had sacrificed their daughter, their integrity, and their peace of mind for an image of prosperity that turned out to be a house of cards. They chose blood over loyalty, and in the end, that blood betrayed them. They viewed me as an asset to be manipulated, a liability to be discarded, and ultimately a debt to be feared. but they never once considered that I was a human being with the capacity to choose my own path. Blood is merely a biological accident. It is a set of genetic instructions, a historical coincidence, a series of chemical reactions that have zero bearing on the quality of your character. I used to feel guilty about the idea of discarding family, as if that were a moral failure on my part. But as I look at the vast expanse of the ocean, I see clearly that loyalty is a choice. You don't inherit loyalty. You earn it through presence, through consistency, and through the quiet, difficult work of showing up for the people you claim to love. My parents failed that test every single day of my life. Isaiah, however, earned my loyalty in the trenches. He earned it when we were eating ramen on the floor of an empty apartment, and he earned it when he stood by my side while I tore down the empire that sought to define me. I turned around in Isaiah's arms, looking up at him. He was tired, the lingering fatigue of a year's worth of corporate warfare etched into his features, but he was at peace. We had created a new definition of family. It wasn't built on the foundation of shared DNA or public appearances. It was built on the foundation of shared values and the radical decision to prioritize the people who didn't view us as leverage. Some might call what I did to my parents cruel. I've read the comments, heard the whispers from distant relatives who still believe that family members should be forgiven simply because they are family. But those people have never been stolen from by the people who were supposed to protect them. They have never watched their own parents conspire to destroy their husband's career, to cover up their own fraud. There is a profound difference between being difficult and being dangerous. My family was dangerous. Removing them from my life wasn't an act of spite. It was an act of survival. If you are listening to this and you feel trapped, if you feel the crushing weight of an obligation to maintain a relationship with people who are actively eroding your spirit, hear me now. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire just to keep others warm. You do not owe your life, your credit score, or your peace of mind to people who see you as an asset to be used. The hardest thing you will ever do is draw that line in the sand, but it is also the most important. The moment you decide that your self-worth is non-negotiable is the moment you start to live. The world is full of people who will love you for who you are, not for who they want to turn you into. You might have to walk away from everyone you have ever known to find them, but the view from the other side is worth every step of the journey. I look at the horizon where the sky meets the water in a seamless, beautiful line. My life is mine now. Every decision, every triumph, and every quiet morning belongs to me and the man I chose. The Caldwell name is no longer a shackle. It's a distant memory, a warning sign from a life I chose to leave behind. I have forged a path where I am enough, and that is a victory that no amount of money could ever buy. If you have had to cut off toxic family members to find your way home to yourself, share your story in the comments. We need to normalize the act of choosing our own healing over their dysfunction. You are the architect of your own story. Never let them dictate your worth. Thank you for walking this road with me, and remember, the people who love you will always make space for you. The most profound lesson from this journey is that true self-worth is never something you can earn from people who are fundamentally incapable of recognizing it. For years, I operated under the delusion that if I simply worked harder, achieved more, or fulfilled the expectations set by my family, I would eventually earn their genuine approval. I allowed their toxic metrics, money, status, and conformity to define my own value. This pursuit not only led to my emotional exhaustion, but also blinded me to the fact that their rejection was never a reflection of my inadequacies. Instead, it was a direct symptom of their own deep-seated brokenness and their need for control. True independence began the moment I stopped viewing my worth as a commodity to be traded for parental validation. When I finally drew the line, I realized that loyalty is a choice, not a biological mandate. Real family consists of those who show up when life falls apart, not those who only grace you with their presence when your success is convenient for their image. Building an authentic life required the painful process of dismantling the false narratives they had constructed about me. By reclaiming my identity and refusing to be a pawn in their financial schemes, I discovered that I was always enough. The power I sought in their eyes was something I possessed all along. I simply had to stop seeking it in a place where it did not exist. My healing was not found in their apology, but in my own decision to walk away and build a reality that honored my soul. If you are currently sacrificing your peace to appease people who do not value you, make the courageous choice to walk away and finally begin living for yourself.